This is the Action Movie Guys podcast, bringing you action movie reviews from across the decades, plus box office numbers and insight like never before. And now, your hosts of the Action Movie Guys podcast, Alex and Nate.
Welcome, everyone, to a brand new episode of the Action Movie Guys podcast, episode 281. We're up to X-Men First Class. We are starting a brand new X-Men trilogy. We're going to start off with the younger class of the X-Men. I'm your host, Alex Figueroa. My co-host is
Nate from Netflix Reviews.
And, of course, we have a special guest. Nate, introduce the person.
Yeah, we have another special guest. So, this is our, we're on a little streak here of having some special guests on the show. We've had Scott, did a great job. We had Pablo. Fantastic. And now we have another great guest. You know him. You love him. He's been on our live shows. He's been on our podcast in the past. His name is Jay Manley. He is one of our Patreon members. Jay, say hello to everybody.
Hello, everybody. How are we doing today?
We're doing good, and they're doing good. I'm sure of it, because now they're listening to your smooth voice. So, yes, that is our guest, Mr. J.
Thank you for having me, I should say.
No. I mean, hey, there's no problem. So before we get started here, we're going to do some financials, then Rotten Tomato scores, and then right into the movie review. But again, before we get started, though, I'd like to ask a little question here. Nate, were you kind of shocked that they started the franchise with the older X-Men instead of the younger X-Men?
Okay, so there's a very specific story about this movie, which really also, I think, if you think about it, will maybe affect your review of the movie. You might have remembered this, you might have not. So I'm not that surprised, because this movie was originally supposed to be the second Origins movie. Remember, you had X-Men Origins Wolverine? This movie started off as X-Men Origins Magneto. Then it's sort of that movie, there was the whole pirated, and then it got bad reviews, and then they pivoted and they decided to we're going to talk about it in a minute, but it's still kind of like a Magneto movie, but they decided to then kind of reboot the entire thing. So with that knowledge, it's not surprising. But if I didn't know that, I would think it was weird. Like, they did a prequel that's like 40 years before. Weird choice after 3 movies.
Yeah, it was kind of weird for me. Jay, what do you think of that?
I would agree with Nate 100%. As far as it was a Magneto Origins movie for me as well. I was surprised by the ratings of this movie.
Okay. All right. So, look, the budget for this movie was $160 million. And Matthew Vaughn said, I'm going to double that for you guys, because the worldwide total was $352 million. So it was a hit.
Yeah.
It was a hit. But it wasn't as big, though.
No.
It wasn't as big as a traditional superhero movie, because, again, 2011, I don't know, Iron Man 1 maybe was around the corner?
2011, Iron Man 1 was definitely out. I think Thor and Captain America came out that year, both. Yeah. So that was a big year for comic book movies. And Dark Knight Rises, I believe. They all came out in 2011. Yeah.
Batman, right. So that was a lot of people going to see Christopher Nolan.
Maybe that affected the box office too. There's a lot of competition that year. That's when the comic book war started, like that 2010-ish era.
Yeah, there you have it, guys. That is the box office numbers for X-Men First Class. Of course, we're going to continue going down the line until the last one, which is Dark Phoenix.
Dark Phoenix.
Right? Dark Phoenix is the last one of it. So we're going to give you guys all the financials there. But let's get right into the Rotten Tomato scores of this. See the critics and the audience have to say about
We're coming back up, baby. We're coming back up. That last one didn't do so great. Okay. Remember? They were not great. However, the first 2 movies had very good reviews. This one actually, to date, I believe these are the highest scores for any X-Men movie that we've done so far. This has an 86% critics and an 87% audience.
Wow.
So very well received. Matthew Vaughn, a very good director, had a vision, did something unique, and the reviews say people liked it.
That's shocking.
But you know what?
It
was
2, by the way. Wasn't this like tied with X-Men 2?
X-Men 2, it might have been around there, yeah. But I think overall the 2 numbers, I think this one's slightly higher, but it's in the ballpark of the best one.
All right, Jay, what do you think of those Rotten Tomato scores with the critics?
I'm going to say I'm not surprised. I thoroughly enjoy. I guess we're going to have to talk about that in review. I won't spoil it. I'm not surprised. I know that the writer was the same director that did the first one.
Bryan Singer was involved.
He was involved in the writing, so I would say coming out with a bang with the second trilogy is a good thing.
I think it was good that Brett Ratner wasn't here. I think that helped. He wasn't here to muck things up.
Yes, leave them out
All
of
right,
it.
so look, with that said, let's get right into it. Lead character, I'm just gonna say the entire X-Men because this is about the origin, about the X-Men. So it's up to Nate how they want to go. But yeah, this is lead character.
Okay, so I've always considered this a Magneto and Professor X movie. The other X-Men are there. Mystique probably gets the next most amount of screen time.
I would say Mystique and Professor. Yeah.
Yeah, she gets the next most. But really, it is about Magneto. I mean, he's the first one you see as far as his scene opens the movie, and his relationship with Charles Xavier is the crux. Now, I agree. If we're gonna whether I'm rating those two or everybody, it's a 5 for me. I think this movie nailed it so hard as far as these characters. Nailed it hard, baby. The Action Movie Guys podcast. I just think they knocked it out of the park. For one, let me just give a quick 2 cents because I know we got 3 of us. James McAvoy, perfect casting as Professor X. Absolutely perfect casting. I think he's great. I think he has it shows that when he was younger, he was a little cocky. You know what I mean? He wasn't the Patrick Stewart yet.
Yeah.
But he had that in him, but he was a little cocky, a little arrogant, and, had a lot to learn. I love it. But if he was perfect casting, then Michael Fassbender as Magneto is perfect plus. Honestly, this guy, I absolutely love him in this movie. I love him in the franchise in general, but I love Ian McKellen. I don't care though. I think he's the best for a better version of Magneto. It shows you how him and Professor X met, how they would form the relationship they did form. It shows his origin of deciding, you know what? I think I might be bad. You know what I mean? And he starts off as an X-Men. He's wearing the blue and yellow, everything. And then he gets that at the end, he gets that red suit and that helmet. Oh my gosh, I love it. I think he's amazing. 5 out of 5. I really think everyone was cast perfect in my opinion.
Jay?
Man, Nate, wow. I couldn't have said it any better. Like the relationship that they had all bonded, from the beginning of the opening scene there, that cold opening was the same thing as in the first X-Men where Magneto had his little, how Magneto, just how his rage built up. And you see the Professor X, before he was Professor X, of course, and Raven, because they didn't even have their names yet. And then how they, like, you're going to be Mystique and you're going to be called Beast. And, Beast didn't even get his name yet. And then what was it? They said, they said, we're going to call you Professor X. It's like how they all got their names and origins. And I just loved it, how they did it. So I gave it a 5 as well. Perfect 5.
Watching this movie, it was weird because I was just like, okay, let's check this out. And I did like the twist with Professor X, that he was just a drunk, like not drunk, but he was using his powers to get women and how the way he talked. So I was like, he was such a 360, and I kind of like that, to be honest with you. But you're right. Professor X was kind of weird for me because I was just like, okay, he was Eric, but he was not on the line of Eric. Like, he was just like, yeah, I agree. Like, we can't do this. But he was like, we got to be good, though. And it was just like, yeah, but like in the beginning of the movie, you were just like straight up like using your powers to bang women. Like I was just trying to like understand your kind of like, you can't kill people. You can use your powers for,
Yeah, you can get laid, but we're not going to kill them. We're just going to.
Yeah. But you do see how he uses Mystique. Like, he was telling Mystique, like, don't change form. Like, he thought she looked hideous in blue, which I'm not going to lie, I thought she looked high in blue too. I got this thing with blue women because I was like, she looked at it. Yeah, I kind of like Rebecca Romijn and her too. But honestly, look, when it came to Magneto, look, oh my Lord, they should have called this Magneto Origins.
It should have stayed as Origins.
It should have. I think it would have not hurt, honestly.
Yeah.
Oh, he is so freaking good, dude. My favorite scene is when he's in Argentina and he grabs the beer and he has the knife and then he throws it to the side and it comes back to him. And I said, oh my God. I said, this is like.
Stabs him in the hand. Throws it in the other guy, brings it back out, and stabs him again. I love it.
I remember the theater going hysterically crazy when they show him do that. I'm gonna say it now, so we can go to the next. This dude, Michael Fassbender, is a way better Magneto than Ian McKellen.
Get an argument from me,
because he sounds awesome. Like, you know what, Ian McKellen, whatever his name is,
Ian McKellen.
Yeah, him. He doesn't do the accent of his actual accent,
Polish.
right?
Yeah,
Polish. This dude did it.
Yeah.
Like he talked Nazi, right?
German.
And then
he spoke German.
Yeah, he spoke German, and then he spoke his actual accent towards the end when he gave. Listen, bro, when he gave the speech, when he had my man Bacon hanging bacon, and he gave the speech like, "Listen, my brothers and sisters, this is what's gonna happen." I said, "Yo, he is the best Magneto in any movie, bro." But anyway. I gave it a 5. You guys give it a 5. Main villain, Kevin Bacon. As, what is he?
Sebastian Shaw.
Sebastian Shaw.
And
Okay,
that's he's from the comics, so he's real.
Okay.
I've looked up all these guys.
Yes.
All right. I'm not trying to be controversial here, but let me say 2 things. Number 1, I actually love Kevin Bacon, like as an actor. I do.
Okay.
I find him likable. I like watching him act. I can't say there's many movies that I've seen him in where I'm like, oh man, Kevin Bacon, he sucks. You know what I mean? Like, I always liked him. And I like his performance in this movie. Especially at the beginning when he's like with the mustache and Magneto's a little kid. He's like, move this coin. And he's nice. He gives him some chocolate, but then he ends up shooting his mom. And you could see like this guy's actually evil.
Chocolate.
Yeah. I love all that. I think the performance is great. My problem is that I don't think the character is that amazing in this movie. After the beginning, once it settles in and they're all grown, okay, he's definitely bad, but he seems like a Bond villain bad. You know, he's on the big yacht. He got the henchmen. He's like dressed nice. He does his own work. I'll give him that. Like, he be blowing people up and turning them into white powder or whatever. So I do think he's cool. He has the helmet, you know, so that they can't read his mind. But I don't know. I thought I was going to like him more from what I remembered. But I did think he was a great performance. I do think he's a very good villain. A very, very good villain. I just wanted to see Magneto be bad. I did give him a 4. Yeah. I just didn't give him a 5. Okay. I said all that to say he's not a 5 for me, but he's still a 4. I think he's a very solid villain. All right, very good.
Jay.
I gave him a 4 too. For the reason why I gave him a 4 is because he had the same idea as, if you thought about it, as what Magneto actually did. He hated, his reasons were, he wanted to get rid of all humans and have all mutants all live and control the mutants, but he wanted to start the war between all humans. I mean, I guess I'm giving the plot for the story, but we're going to get to that. But he was able to absorb all the energy, and then like he took that bomb that when Magneto first got there. That grenade thing, man, I thought that was a cool scene right there. He absorbed that grenade and then, with that general, right? And the general threw that grenade at him and he absorbed that bomb and put it back on the general and blew him up. I thought that was a cool scene right there. So I really enjoyed that part. I mean, his intentions were great, but that's why I thought he was a good villain.
He was sort of the proto-Magneto. Right? Like,
prototype.
He was the Magneto before Magneto, but just with his power was okay, but...
Right.
Yeah, I mean, isn't he Gambit, though? Gambit has that type of power, right?
Yeah, he has the same, like, power, a similar... I don't think Gambit can absorb energy, but he can put it into into
and then he throws, that's why he has the card.
It's like half Gambit.
Yeah, half Gambit. Half Gambit.
True.
So, yeah, in terms of Kevin Bacon, Sebastian Shaw, I liked him. And what made him cool, though, is the fact that you did not know that he had powers until later. Because in the beginning, you see, he was like, that's true. He's like breaking everything, and he's like laughing all crazy. Like, I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. But he gave Magneto the motivation to be evil because he killed his mom. And this whole time, Magneto just wanted to get this dude, and he got him. And I was like, I kind of liked it. But you know what? He got his hands dirty, though, Kevin Bacon. They infiltrated the facility. My man was doing his thing. And I love the scene with the fire and everything. I was like, you know what? I do understand what you mean, Nate. I mean, I don't think he's a perfect villain, but I think he's not in a sense of a traditional perfect villain, but I think he was the perfect villain for this movie to kick off Magneto. Yeah. That's what I'm trying to say.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I think he's the villain that you go, okay, you know what? Kevin Bacon was the right actor for this type of movie. But let me tell you, Emma Frost was hot.
That's January Jones.
January Jones.
Yeah, whatever it was, January Jones. Let me just tell you, Emma Frost was hot. My man Ezekiel, the one that, like, whatever his Nightcrawler's dad, whatever he is.
Oh, his name is
wasn't it like Ezekiel or something?
Oh my God, I know his name and I can't think of it right now.
Now you forgot.
He's like the red Nightcrawler.
Yeah, him. Anyway, that dude, I thought he was pretty cool. Then you got the tornado-looking wrestling character. He looked like Didn't he look like a WWE
Bro,
wrestler?
he's always like looking for the camera, like trying to look sexy with his
He look
hair.
like, what's
So,
the
like, what is
wrestler's
this guy,
name?
bro?
Yeah.
What's his
Tornado
name? Jim
Man.
Morrison?
Tornado Boy. Yeah, John Morrison.
Yeah, he looked just like him. Like,
John
I
Morrison.
don't know. I agree with you. Other than that, like, I thought his supporting villains worked well with this movie, too. Like, they was not corny like Toad and Sabretooth. Like, these
Azazel.
dudes...
That was his name. Azazel.
Yeah. Like, these dudes were not corny like Toad and Sabretooth.
that's for sure.
These dudes were good. And Emma Frost was good, too. Like,
She's
I
a
mean,
horrible actress.
Yeah, she was bad.
Every
but
time she talked, it's like, oh my God, don't talk anymore. Just
No.
stand there and look
Turn it-
diamond.
Her voice was really soft.
No, I do agree, though, but
She was soft.
I thought Emma Frost was really good. I think everyone gelled very well, but Kevin Bacon was, like, highlighted also in this movie. All right.
What'd you give
4
him?
for me.
Oh, okay.
4 for you. And Jay gave him a 4 also. That's 4 across the board.
Straight fours.
Action scenes. All right, let's go with Jay. Jay, action
okay,
scenes. You go first.
I struggled with this.
Be
part.
honest. Just be honest.
Follow your heart.
Yeah.
It took a while for the action to get into this. I'm going to give it a generous 3 because it took a while for it to happen. And it's not like there wasn't enough action in there. It just some of the action didn't start happening till when I expected it to. I was hoping that because first when you see it, I'm saying this because it was more like they were recruiting. First, it was the recruitment. I mean, when the action did happen, it was like Magneto. Well, Eric will say, because he hadn't been called Magneto yet. Eric was doing his revenge. He had that fight scene, but then there was a long time where Eric met up with Professor X, and they went on their recruitment, and then they were training them, and then there was the little bit of the fight scene with them, and then there was then they had the battle. So I mean, there were some great fight scenes. It just seemed like there wasn't much action for me, in my opinion, but it took a while. And then and I say the final, that was about the best part of it, was where good action happened. And so,
Well, you know what? Your opinion is
3.
the only one that matters for your
Yeah.
score. So that's perfectly fine. I will agree with Jay in one regard, and I will disagree in one regard. I agree that there's not a ton of action in this movie, but I feel like we could say this is par for the course with the X-Men movies. They are like story-driven comic books.
Yes. Yeah.
They are and this one's no different. Like this one's heavy on story, which I'm fine with if the story's good, which we're going to get to in a second. But these are not like big, huge action spectacles. Where I'll disagree is I gave it a 4, not a 3. I gave it a 4. I do think the execution is why I think it's so good. Matthew Vaughn, I think a fantastic director. I actually love the way he shoots action, and I think he got better after this movie, by the way.
Yeah.
Like the Kingsman movies,
Yeah.
I think he killed it. But there was flashes here. I love the scene where they're in the facility and Azazel is like morphing and like slicing dudes with a knife. He's just like killing people. The aforementioned Magneto scene in Argentina is great. It's brutal. This is borderline R-rated. It's PG-13, but if you put a little splatters in here, this thing is R, at some of these parts. So I like that. I do think, beyond that, you get little spurts like the general that gets blown up. The finale, though, I think is really good. First of all, and Alex, I know you go next, so maybe you'll agree, but I think this movie has some of the most underrated flying scenes. They look like the scene where Banshee is holding Havoc. It looks like 2 dudes are actually flying over the water. Like, it doesn't look CGI.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's wires, but it was like seamless. And you see these other movies where it looks totally fake. Like the way he shot Banshee flying over the water, I thought was great. I love how Magneto is just like a freaking monster and is like, first of all, he kills the guy with a quarter. I love it. He had that coin, put it through his head, and it was blood on it. I love it. But then he's holding down freaking Professor X, and he's fighting, and he's holding missiles, and I love the whole missile thing. I thought it was great. Yeah, I gave it a 4. I think it's not enough for a 5 for me, but it's so well executed that I gave it a 4.
I agree with you. This is getting a 4 for me too. I don't think it was a 5. There's not much action in this movie, but you're right. Execution and quality, I gotta say, of this action scene. So this is what I think I liked about this movie that worked so well. The fact that Matthew Vaughn knew the budget and how to utilize the budget with these characters. I'll talk about it in storyline, but like Havoc's, right? Alex Summers' powers. This dude he could have went a lot of budget on this dude. There was a few scenes where a lot of people shined, and I thought it worked very well. Beast, was really good in this movie. Not crazy like Beast in X-Men 3, where we all loved them and we're like, oh, this dude crazy.
Yeah.
But they utilized them pretty well. I did not like the design of Beast as much. I thought he looked a little bit weird with the CGI because there's some parts that looked like he was CGI'd.
He was, yeah.
It did not look good. But other than that, I think with Raven, what he did with Mystique was very well. Magneto scenes was just top notch. Oh man, this dude knew what he was doing, Magneto, bro. The scene that I went nuts because I totally forgot about it is when they hit the Blackbird and they start rolling on the beach, and my man went right on top of Professor X, and all you heard was whoomp, and he literally magnetized himself onto the plane so him and Professor X, he doesn't get hurt.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is genius filmmaking, because literally he could have did it the other way, but he literally thought about the scene like, wait a minute, it would be pretty cool if he magnetized himself on, like magnetically attached himself with Professor X so he doesn't get hurt. And I loved it. And when he fell off, you saw Professor fall. So I was like, that is so awesome. There's some awesome scenes. I agree with you. The ending, I wish we had like an actual battle between Kevin Bacon and Magneto, but there's nothing you can do because it's magnetic. It is what it is.
Yeah.
But you're right, bro. That scene, him holding all those missiles up, and he told everybody to get back. And I said, yo, this is the shit right here. This is what you here to see in an X-Men movie. And you know what? I think the tension that he brought into these action scenes were phenomenal. And you can see why, because these dudes were not trained. And the scene that they were infiltrating the CIA building, these guys were scared and they were running away from these dudes. And I was just like, I like that. They didn't all try to stand their ground and use their powers, and then at the end of the day, they come out winning. Like, no. I thought that was cool, but look, at the end of everything, I gave it a 4. I thought the action was top quality, and I thought and you know what? The effects still held up.
Oh, yeah.
After all these years. Great. It looks amazing.
Besides Beast, it looks great.
Yeah, Beast was kind of funky. But other than that, let's get to storyline. Jay, what did you think of the storyline?
Storyline. Okay. I loved it. I love the story here. I'm not going to. I'll give it a 4 here, and it's a solid 4. You of course, it's an origin. We already talked about this. It's an origin story. It's like you said. This should have been a Magneto origin story. We start with Magneto as a young boy. And he gets separated from his family, and of course, Sebastian Shaw kills his mother, and we understand his rage and his hatred for humans, but it doesn't build up. It kind of builds up towards it from the first act to the second act and to the finality, to where he has his upset, where he's mad, and he goes from good guy to not so much a villain, but the anti-hero against humans. But what I liked about this story was, versus what happened in X-Men Last Stand, you saw his real emotions show when Xavier gets shot in the back.
Oh, yeah, he gets pissed off.
Where he gets pissed off, and that's where he starts, but then he, his recruitment, he starts recruiting his crew. And that's what I liked about this story. And I mean, not only that, you got the bonding of all the X-Men. And again, I already mentioned it again. It's like their name, they already got their names. Magneto accepts his name, and Raven goes from Raven to Mystique. And he's telling Mystique that, you should always accept who you are. He's telling these mutants that you should not reject who you are, accept who you are. That's what I felt where this story was a perfect story. I shouldn't say a perfect story, but it was an excellent story. This is a story how it should be. And if I want to say more, but I don't want to.
Let the rest of us talk, there. Mr. J.
Yes.
All right. Storyline. So I'll try to be a little quicker so that Alex can have the chance. Alex, I think the storyline's great, but it's not perfect for me, and I'll tell you why. I think if this movie purely focused on Magneto and Xavier, and honestly did not get necessarily into forming the X-Men, I think this would have been a 5 for me, honestly. Like, let's say it's just them two. They're the two that are coming up. They're the two that are trying to stop Shaw. He gets shot at leave Moira in, right? Rose Byrne's character. She could still be in it, working with the CIA, whatever. He gets injured. And after that, like, the next movie focused on him recruiting people, and Magneto doing the same on the. I think different story. 5 out of 5. I think some of the recruitment of the X-Men, like some of the X-Men characters, like Alex Summers, for example, I really think he did not get, he didn't get the time to shine that he deserved. That's like, well, as far as I know, that's Cyclops' brother, Havoc is. And they don't really, Banshee, he gets nothing to do, really, like he's there. Zoe Kravitz character, Angel, she gets, like they don't really do much. And that's because the focus isn't them. Even though it's called X-Men First Class, it's not really about them. So I think those parts, while I like them and I like the casting, I think if it was more focused on that other storyline, I would have gave it a 5. As such, I still give it a 4. I think it's very strong. But to me, this is the first time where I feel like there was almost too many characters and it could have been actually dialed down a little bit.
I do agree with you on that front. When it comes to the storyline, I do agree with you. I gave it a 4. I think what I would do different is focus on the team aspect, like them putting it together towards the end. Or not even. Let them have the adventures of Magneto and Professor or something. I feel like sometimes the movie was kind of long. It felt a little long. I think this one felt a little bit long, but not bad. Not in a bad way. Like, I don't want people to be like, oh, I just feel like there was certain things you could trim out.
So
there was just some stuff. Huh?
The pacing could have used.
The pacing was a little bit slow.
Yeah,
it was a little bit slow, and I was just like, oh man, like especially when Emma Frost went to the general in Russia, that's so useless. When they captured her, I was like, this is so useless. Like, who cares? But I do agree with you, Nate. I mean, you were there for Magneto. Like, to be really honest with you, they should have just left it as a Magneto movie. I enjoyed it, but look, James McAvoy was great as Professor X. And one thing that Jay said that what I liked a lot is when they showed him get paralyzed.
Yeah.
When he went like that, shaping, and they hit him in the back. He said, "Ah!" And I was like, did it hit him in the ass? But then you saw it hit him in the butt. Like,
and then he blamed the girl.
Kind of funny.
This is your fault.
Yeah, and I was just like, wait a minute. I was like, it's not really. I was like, it's your fault, you dumbass. Like, you blocked it. But that's the funny thing. Like, if you really look at it, because he literally could have stopped the bullet. Because she was shooting it. He's just dishing it all over. I'm like, dude, you could have just grabbed it and stopped. Like, okay, whatever. But I love that whole thing. I thought that scene, I was just like, oh, shit. When I saw it in the theater, I was like, yo, like, they did this now? Like, I thought he was going to be like, movie 2, he gets paralyzed. It was like, nah, he loses his hair later down. We're going to give you the paralyzed Professor X right now. I love that. Very emotional, especially Raven leaving him. Like, I don't know how true to the story that is. Like, Raven was with him growing up, because then that's kind of evil shit. Like, she just went evil, like, out of the blue. Like, okay. But again, look, all in all, fantastic story. I still think Jean Grey and Cyclops should have been here. But it's just me. I know they didn't want to show it all, because then it would have been like all the X-Men. But if you had Scott,
it might not have worked either, because they would be like, they look like they were in their 30s in the X-Men, and that movie was 2000, and that was set in the future, and this was the 60s. They'd be like 50 years old.
But is this the prequel to the first X-Men 2000, or is this like comic book origin, like whatever?
No, it's the same. It's the same, because remember, you have Logan in there, Wolverine at that bar scene. Right. So it's in the same
universe. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Because I was like, wouldn't Jean Grey and Scott be the first students?
Not to do a spoiler.
Because that's what he said.
Yeah, not to do a spoiler, but the next movie, they are all remember, Patrick, they're all in it. So it is the same
that's true.
thing.
Okay. All right. I guess. All right. So, but there was one line that he said in X-Men 1. He said that they opened up the school with him.
Yeah. No, yeah. I got some stuff for overall. That's it.
No, I'm just saying. I just remember, I think Patrick Stewart said that. She was like, Scott and Jean was one of his first students. So I was like, this movie, if you're going to tell me this is the first, then technically Alex Summers should have been in part of the adults too. But look, it is what it is. You can be all nerd about it. But again, I enjoyed it a lot. I thought it's not a perfect script, but I give it a 4. I thought it was really great. All right. So now, overall, all right, Jay, overall, what did you think of the film overall?
Okay. I'm going to say this. As far as rewatching the X-Men series, I'm going to say, as of right now, this is my second favorite X-Men rewatch movie as of right now. So I'm going to give this a 4. The execution, even though I gave that action a 3, I'm going to say I like this a lot. So it was a good. Overall, the storyline, the pacing could have been a little bit better, but I enjoyed it for what it was. So
all right. Neat.
All right.
Good.
I'll agree
with
movie. Jay in the sense of what we've watched so far. Yeah, this is probably my second favorite one after X2. I do think it's a great movie. My problem, and Alex, it's something you pointed out, and it's always bugged me. And they were screwed up. They were screwed up from the jump in these movies. Okay, the timeline doesn't make any sense. It does not make any sense. And it bugged me when I saw this movie in 2011 because while it works just fine, there's 3 characters that this timeline works for just fine. And that's Magneto, Xavier, and Mystique. Because Beast, if you remember, there's a line where he tells her, your cells, you age slower, basically. Your cells, the way they work, you're aging, like when you're older, you're going to look younger. So it makes sense that in the future X-Men movies, she doesn't look really old. You know what I mean? Even though she could be, apparently she's as old as Charles Xavier and Magneto, pretty much. They were in the 40s. The movie opens in the 40s, okay? And they're like 10 years old. So it makes sense for those 3. Alex Summers, again, that's supposed to be Scott's, Magneto's or Cyclops' brother. I guess he's way older than him, but, they don't really mention it. The other thing is, like, not just the timeline, but like the relationships, they don't all make sense. Like, okay, you're telling me that Raven grew up with Charles Xavier, apparently, from like when they were little kids until college, after college. But then in the new X-Men movies, like, they don't even acknowledge that they knew each other. She has no scenes with Xavier where she's like, hey, remember when we grew up? And there's none of that. So some of those things always irked me about this. I'm like, wait a second. She was with Magneto. This movie, the way it ends, okay, that makes sense. But like, when did they ever acknowledge that she knew Charles before, or that they grew up together, or that they were like brother and sister? He says it himself. He's like, you're like my sister. So that always bugged me. With those minor things out of the way, just taking the movie for what it is, a 4. I think it's great. If you don't factor in later movies or earlier movies and you just watch it for what it is, I do think it's great. Great acting, great direction. I actually love the music in this movie. The score, like, I like that they changed it. It's like that dun 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 dun. I think it's really good. I think the score is really good. I love the way it looks. And a 4 for me.
All right. Well, look, overall, I agree with you. I give it a 4 too. I was looking up to see if Raven did stay with Professor X, but I couldn't find it. But no, I couldn't find it. Like, it doesn't.
That could have been made up just for the movie. I don't know.
I think so, because I'm like, did Raven live with Professor X in the comics? But
yeah, I feel like they didn't. I think it was a weird choice. I think it was a weird choice to force her in.
It says the movies have established a close relationship between Charles Xavier and the shapeshifting Mystique. In fact, according to the X-Men First Class, the 2 basically grew up together. In the comics, however, the 2 have
seldom
crossed paths.
Yeah, they didn't know each other.
And they usually been fighting for very different causes. So they just pretty much made that shit up.
So the OG movies make more sense as far as their relationship.
Yeah,
exactly.
Because then she wouldn't know how to get to Cerebral.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. It makes it. What happens here affects the other. You can't watch them in this order.
I agree.
You have to watch them in the order we're watching them in.
Yeah. It doesn't make sense. Right. Anyway, in terms of that, I give the movie itself, I give the movie a 4. And the reason I gave the movie a 4, I agree with you. The timeline is kind of weird, but in terms of that, I enjoyed the movie a lot. I was really glued to it, even watching it now. I love Michael Fassbender as Magneto, James McAvoy as Professor X. I was a little if with not having Jean Grey and Cyclops in the movie, but that was just me. Other than that, everything was cool. I felt like it was very slow paced at times, where I just felt like it was getting stretched out a lot. But other than that, I think it was just great as a beginning of a franchise. I thought they did a great job, and they hit it in all aspects of what you want in a franchise, in a superhero franchise at that. Other than that, Jay, what is your overall score of this?
I have a 20.
Nice.
If my math is right, a 20.
I'm 21.
I'm at 21 too. I am at a 21.
This is top notch. We're like the Rotten Tomatoes here. We agree.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. All right, Nate, what is coming up next on the podcast?
All right, so next week, or next episode, I should say, we will be continuing with our penultimate sci-fi action episode for Sci-Fi Action Month, and that'll be Starship Troopers. Our guest Jay will be back for that episode. And then next week, we got a big boy coming up, and this is just me and you, brother. No guests. We're going to be doing a little X-Men Days of Future Past. This was a moment in time in 2014. I remember when this came out. It was like, Bryan Singer's coming back to direct. This is going to be crazy. And is it crazy? Is it not? I don't know. We're going to talk about it next week.
I remember not liking the movie when I came out the theater.
That's funny because I remember loving it. So
I know. I remember me and you was talking about it. We had the opposite opinions on it. But again, when we talked about it, we haven't seen it since the theater. So
it's been a while.
Yeah. So I can't wait to sit back and
maybe this
will
be a classic episode where we go totally opposite. It has been a while.
Be funny.
It's been a while since that has happened.
That is true. All right. Other than that, guys, you guys want to follow us in our social media accounts, please follow Nate over Instagram at Netflix Reviews. Check out the podcast with him and his friends called Netflix Movie Reviews. Follow our official official website at www.geeksandflix.com. Other than that, I'm your host, Alex Figueroa. My co-host is
Nate from Netflix Reviews.
And our special guest,
Jay Manley 84. Jay Manley 84, where you might find me doing some smoking some meat sometime.
Well, all right.
Some
He smokes the meats, ladies.
There you go.
But other than that, be awesome to each other and geek out.